Hello everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Liana Lixandru and I'm a part of the digital customer experience team. Today we will be looking at async patterns with Spring Boot microservices and OCI streaming. And in order to help us understand more on the subject, we've got Fernando Harris with us. Fernando, could you please introduce yourself?
Hey Liana, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Fernando Harris. I'm app dev domain specialist in Oracle. And yes, today we are going to talk about Spring Boot and how to use Spring Boot actually to set up an asynchronous pattern inside Oracle Cloud with OCI streaming and instance principles. The idea, Liana, is basically to explore a bit this type of pattern, which is very important because it's robust, it's flexible, and it's very important when you are trying to set up loosely coupled architectures. And they are typically, as I said, very reliable because they are more tolerant to failure. And you probably heard about, Liana, or you worked with, or the people actually listening to us with things such as JMS, Kafka, AQ,
For sure.
MQing. Yeah. So these are different, basically different types of tools or technologies to achieve this a very similar result, right? Whether you are talking about topics or queuing, the idea here is basically to have the possibility to set up these event-driven architectures, right? Which today, when we talk about loosely coupled systems, highly available systems, highly scalable systems, and typically we end up discussing these decoupled architectures such as microservices. And what we are going to see here today is that we need some sort of messaging system to help us setting up this type of architecture. And that's why we are going to show OCI streaming, the OCI streaming service, which is it's really nice because when you are actually setting up a messaging system, let's say that you want that messaging system to provide high availability to your architecture, right?
Or scalability.
Yeah. But the thing is that you have also to guarantee that that messaging system is itself high available and scalable, right? So OCI streaming can be interesting that way because being a managed service and relying on OCI quality of service and high availability and scalability, it's cool because you can start immediately playing around and having it ready as a messaging system without having to think about configuring and highly available and managing it and upgrading it and all that type of things. And what is cool about the OCI streaming service is that is compatible with Kafka, right? So at least for some APIs to produce and to consume messages, connect admin and group management APIs are compatible. This means that you can use the same code you are using, for instance, to consume Kafka APIs. You can basically adapt it very easily to use the OCI streaming as well.
That sounds great. That's great news.
I don't know. I'm already sharing my screen, right? So we are actually
I can't wait to see more from you. Sure.
The OCI console, and I've been talking about OCI streaming. So let me show you where OCI streaming is in terms of the Oracle Cloud Console. So basically, if you go to Analytics and AI, you have this option here, messaging. Inside, you have streaming, right? And it's kind of cool because to create the stream is very, very easy, right? You basically need to. I already have here one created, which we are going to use, but the process is very simple. You give it a name, the compartment where it will exist. You can basically select an existing stream pool or create a new one, right? In this case, I have this default pool here created if I wanted to reuse it. And then you have some technical aspects regarding the way you configure the stream in terms of the retention, the number of partitions, the performance in terms of total write and total read, right? Rates. And I'm not going to create it right now. I'm going to reutilize this one.
Sure.
I called it curiosity. And you can see, right, that we can actually produce test messages to make some kind of probing testing or start playing around with it. And some things here which are important to mention is this endpoint, this messages endpoint, as you can as you probably already guessed, this is the endpoint we are going to use by our applications, whether to produce or to consume messages from it, right? Also relevant to say is that you can actually create this stream with the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure APIs, right? You can create streams, delete streams, produce messages with the APIs as well. So it means you can use just curl or Postman after getting properly authenticated. You can actually do the same things you do with the console. You can do with the REST APIs.
Yeah, that sounds great. More options, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. So the exercise we are going to propose here today, it's very simple. So we are going actually to try to implement this pattern here.
Okay.
So already I have this implemented. So we have this stream we just saw, right? Called Curiosity, which is configuring OCI streaming, and then we are going to have two services, two Spring Boot microservices. One called Curiosity microservice, which is actually producing messages or publishing messages, and it's running on my laptop, and is actually sending the messages to the Curiosity stream, right? And then we will have a second microservice, Spring Boot as well, called Consumer microservice, which is going to subscribe to this stream and is going to consume the messages produced by the Curiosity microservice. What is interesting is that the first service, as I said, is going to run on my local laptop, and the second is running on OCI container engine deployed in Kubernetes. That means that we'll have a challenge here in terms of security, right? Because in this case, I can actually use my local laptop OCI configuration to connect through those, right? Against OCI. But in this case, I can actually use authentication instance principles, and I'll explain in a minute why. Okay, so this is the exercise we are going to do. Let's see here first the code from the publisher microservice.
Yeah.
Right. As I said, it's inside this microservice called Consumer microservice. And let me see. I'm seeing the consumer right now. So I want to see the producer, which is a Curiosity microservice. Let me just show you here a bit of the code. So even before the POM file, to check a couple of things in the configuration.
Yeah.
Which are important to check. Basically, these dependencies, right? If you want to play around with Oracle Cloud, you can use the OCI SDK, and the OCI SDK comes in many flavors and supports many different types of platforms, whether Java, Python. Okay, so you can actually do this type of pattern using the SDK. When I say this type of pattern, any pattern which implies connecting and using OCI APIs, you can use the SDK. And in this case, I'm using the Java SDK. I basically using these two dependencies to, it's obvious, right? I mean, the OCI core, right? And the streaming. So I can play around with its APIs.
Of course.
Yeah. And then I have a class here called Championship Service Publisher. And well, this is very simple because as you can see, we have here some annotations which are coming as properties. Yeah. And these annotations, as I said before, you have the stream endpoint and the stream ID. Okay. Previously, I actually showed only the stream endpoint, right? But we also have here the stream ID. So these two properties are going to be used in our code here.
That makes sense.
To be passed as parameters here.
Sure.
Through annotations. Yeah, but they are basically living in the application properties, right? And you can pass them as environment variables when you are compiling the code, right? So it's just an approach for it. And then the code itself is very, very, very simple because it's going to make basically three things. It's going to first prepare this method here, preparing OCI call, is basically using my local configuration. If you remember, I said that I was going to use my local OCI config file. So it's actually using that to prepare the OCI call. And then after getting the authentication done, as you know, the authentication file, the config file, has my user OCID, my API fingerprint, the tenancy, the region, right, and the path for the key,
of
right?
course,
so yeah. I'm running this locally, so no problems with that. And then it's going after authenticating. Basically, it's gets ready to prepare the event which is going to be published to the stream. It's basically a JSON message which is going to be sent to the stream. And finally, it publishes that messages to the stream. Basically, it's 3 different things it's actually doing. It's a very simple code, and each time the endpoint is hit, it's going to publish a message, right?
And all of this is using the SDK, right, that you imported in the POM file, and for which I'm sure we've got like documentation available if everyone wants to check.
Yeah, absolutely. When you start playing with the stream service, you actually have a section in the documentation for guiding you to go to each SDK, right? So you can, if you are a Python developer, you'll use the Python SDK. If you are a JavaScript, a Node.js developer, you'll use its SDK, and that's the idea, right? I've used the Java one, but you have these very well documented with examples. Actually, this code comes from those examples, right? You can just adapt it to your use case. In this case, I already have the service compiled. Right. So if we want to do a test, let me open my Postman.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do a test here with Africa instead of Europe, right? And let's send a message. Let's send a couple.
Right. So what is this doing? It's basically polling for wiki pages.
Yeah, this service is basically consuming the Wikipedia APIs and bringing information. Cool. So if I ask information regarding Africa, it's basically bringing the pages from the content regarding Africa.
Right.
I have other endpoints which are actually bringing articles, for instance, the articles about Africa, right? So you can get the content from the article. So it's just playing around with an open API. It's cool for this type of exercise.
Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah.
So in this case, I'm going to make a couple of calls with the same subject, which is Africa. And then we can actually get back to our OCI console and load the messages here. And as you can see, Liana, the messages are published, right?
Awesome.
So my service running locally, let's check. So you can actually see that it's publishing the messages. It's getting here, look, Africa Oracle, the same request we sent.
Yeah.
And then he authenticates with my default profile with the OCI configuration file, which you see here in my local laptop, right? It gets the endpoint for the stream and
publishes it. Yeah.
As Great. We can confirm here, right? I mean, in the OCI console. So
right.
Cool.
We saw them in the queue there.
Yeah. So this is part of the exercise, right? So we publish these messages against the curiosity. Let's take a look now on how to configure the consumer, right? So let's go. Now this is the code. This is the consumer.
So this is the consumer that's running inside Container Engine for Kubernetes, right?
Yes.
I think you mentioned that earlier, right?
So
this is running in OCI.
Yeah. This is running in OCI, and this time the authentication process is slightly different, right? Because why? Basically, because can you imagine if I want to use my OCI configuration files and my API key and send that to the Kubernetes cluster, that wouldn't be very cool. Wouldn't be cool, sure. Right? I mean, it would be dangerous to keep to send secrets and passwords and API keys and configuration files to the Kubernetes cluster.
That would be a major security issue.
Yeah. So we can use a concept which is the instance principles and dynamic groups, right? As you are aware. So basically, again, I'll go back to the OCI console.
Yeah. And meanwhile, maybe our viewers don't know this, but you've got actually 3 ways of authenticating using the SDK, right? You've got the first method that Fernando used using his configuration file, which uses local configuration. You've got the possibility to authenticate as an instance, and also there is a third one, right? As a resource.
Right. So in this case, we are going to basically to use that concept of instance principles to like in some way we are going to create an identity for a specific resource, right? In this case, we have I have this dynamic group here, and inside this dynamic group I have a matching rule, and this matching rule is basically saying that, oh well, all the instances inside this compartment should belong to this dynamic group. Just saying that, like a kind of filter, like a kind of selection, right? And then having prepared this matching rule, if we go back to identity and if we go to policies, we can actually configure a policy to make sure that dynamic group we created, EMEA OKI dynamic group, is able in this case to play around with the stream service. So you have here, you can manage stream services, the stream service inside this compartment, Fernando Harris, right? And so this is very well documented as well, Liana. And the best practice is a best practice, and as an approach to develop this type of pattern is what we recommend. So after configuring the dynamic group, including the instances, and don't forget that the instance we are talking about, which is configured inside this dynamic group, is the instances inside the Kubernetes cluster, right? So we are saying that instances inside a Kubernetes cluster will be authorized to use the streams in this compartment. It's as simple as that. So having this part done, we can take a look on how we develop the service.
I think there's another important thing to note, because there is a difference between using an instance principle and a resource principle. If, for example, you wouldn't have used instances where to host this code, and you would have wanted to use it in example in Oracle Functions, then you would use the resource principle, because you're not authenticating as an instance, but instead you're authenticating as a cloud resource in
the resource. Yeah, exactly. Very well explained, Liana. Let's get back to the code here, to the consumer code.
Sure.
Well, and let's start by taking a look on the POM file. So basically, the POM file it has some more OCI dependencies, right? Because it has the same two, the streaming and the core, but then we have also some things to play around with. In this case, this one, the Java SDK identity, to play around with the instance principles.
That makes sense. So, of course.
Yeah. So and then we have this one, because I'm basically using the REST Easy Client configurator to call the APIs. It's a different approach from the previous used.
Sure.
Then the code is pretty much, it does the same, but from the perspective of the consumer, right? If we take a look on it, so basically the first piece of the code, let me try to find it. Again, you get the configuration items from the streaming, right? The endpoint and the ID, again, being passed through annotations. We have also the compartment ID being passed, because we need these for the instance principles.
Right.
And then we are basically going to prepare the OCI call. The method has the same name, but in this case is behaving slightly differently, right? Because we are using actually these instance principal authentication details provider.
Of course,
we are creating these in order to use then the authentication when this is deployed from within the Kubernetes cluster. And the magic is done, let's call it like that. After being authenticated, we can actually start preparing to consume the messages from the stream. In this case, I'm polling the stream and waiting for the messages to come. And when the messages, when you receive the messages, well, you can play around with the JSON, with the object mapper, and playing then around with the message, right? It's very simple. If we do another test, right? Let's try to send a couple of messages more again here with Africa.
So we can see them getting consumed.
Let's see, because in Kubernetes we have actually a cron job also.
Okay.
Let's see in the OCI console how is this being run.
Sure.
As you know, we can here with the Cloud Shell, we can very easily. Let me see if I can already have here. So and now it's Africa, right? We are trying to find Africa. Let's see if we are lucky or if we have to wait. Yeah, so we are getting, as you can see, the messages we send with the query Africa were caught and consumed, right? The publisher was actually able to get those messages and read them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like that. Yeah, it's a very simple exercise, but a very important pattern, which can help developers and architects working with Oracle Cloud to set up these asynchronous architectures, distributed architectures for microservices, for event-driven, and with OCI, and in this case with OCI streaming. I hope you enjoyed, Liana.
Yeah, this was awesome. I learned a lot of new things, and OCI streaming looks very cool. So I'm looking forward to play with it a bit more myself as well. Thank you very much, Fernando. This was very interesting.
See you next time. Bye.
And thank you everyone for watching our video. Please join us next time for more awesome content. Thank you.